A new scramble for Africa. Same scramble, different players. The old powers have been kicked out, France, Britain and the USA, and new ones are in, Russia and China. What lies in store for the continent and the Sahel in particular? Learning Russian instead of English and French? There's a new order in the Sahel, and it's an Africa Corps order. So join me, Jan Darasz, for how we got here.
On April 10th, a 100-man-strong regiment of the African Corps, a military organization under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, began their deployment in Niger. Consequently, Russia's military presence in the Sahel region has expanded by yet another nation, after establishing influence in Sudan in 2017, Mali in 2021 and Burkina Faso in 2024. The arrival of the contingent was intensively discussed by the Kremlin and the military junta which took power in Niger in July 2023. Additionally, the junta forced the previously stationed French military contingent to leave Niger in December 2023. Moreover, the military leaders also terminated agreements regulating the US military presence in the country, and on April 20th, the State Department agreed to withdraw the American contingent of 1,000 troops from the African nation. Although the Russian troops have officially arrived in Niger as military instructors, they will most likely serve to expand the Kremlin's influence on the African continent. The relatively small size of the contingent indicates that its primary task will be to support the ruling junta in maintaining its power. In exchange for protection, Russia expects concessions for natural resources exploitation. Niger is the 7th largest uranium producer in the world. The presence of the African Corps in Niger is seen by many as Moscow's success and the West's failure in the indirect rivalry on the continent. The increase of Russian influence in Niamey also means, from the EU's perspective, an increased risk of stimulating migratory pressure on the bloc by means of migrant transit routes from Niger to Libya and Algeria. After Niger, Russia's next target could be Chad, a country with a notable American and French military presence. The ruling junta of Mahamat Déby in Chad aims to strengthen its relations with Russia and the Sahel countries Russia supports. The coup's leader visited Moscow in January this year, where he met with Putin.
My guest is Jędrzej Czerep, the coordinator of the Middle East and Africa program at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Pretty brutal question to start off with the Sahel. Has the West lost the battle for the Sahel?
Well, it lost the battle for minds and hearts. It's very clear that the Russians are popular. The anti-Western sentiments are clearly resonating with the general populations. And there is a momentum that Russians, Iranians and Chinese have at the expense of the West. It's a very good idea for local leaders to declare eviction of Western military forces, like you have American troops being ordered to leave Niger, and that immediately resonates among the population. That is what the governments, the military governments of those countries can capitalize on and can build their legitimacy on.
And the French they left that region earlier than the Americans, didn't they?
Yes, the anti-French sentiments created the whole thing. That was the roots of the whole change. With the failures, or with the perceived failures of the French, or with the real or perceived shadow influence by France, many of local frustrations were redefined and told in a new story that this is all of our failures are because of French. The jihadis expanded in the last 10 years despite French presence. Well, that's probably because of French. And the Russian popularity was born out of those sentiments as a reverse side of the same medal. Whoever is not happy with France will automatically be looking into alternatives, and Russia was the new one.
You told a telling little snippet of information from the Niger when they redid the French flags, the French tricolour, and repurposed them into Russian flags.
Yeah, that's quite a popular thing that the tailors do on markets in Burkina Faso, in Mali, or in Niger. That's quite a popular thing that tailors do on markets in Mali, Burkina Faso, or Niger, where they take the French flags and resew them into Russian flags. That the same colors. You just need to reorder the stripes. But that also tells that those sentiments are quite superficial. You don't really need to fully agree with Russia and Russia's policies and really understand what Russia represents. The Russian flag represents a rebellion against the unloved status quo, against all the injustices, all the failed expectations, and Russia is seen as this new force that breaks the old order and brings a promise of something new.
But the Wagner Group, or the Africa Corps as it's known as, what does that group need to do to gain, as you said, the hearts and minds that the West has lost? Does it need to defeat the Islamists? Does it need to restore order, a modicum of order in the countries? Well,
defeating the Islamists would be their big victory. This is where the Western allies failed or didn't succeed to the extent that would really change the situation on the ground. And Russian troops were pretty much called in to replace the Western partners in the fight against the jihadis. On this front, you don't really have much. Russia's troops that don't really have much experience and then don't really have much of an idea of how to do it.
They have a brutal reputation.
Oh yes, they do. If you look at the recent Human Rights Watch report from the region, you have dozens of stories where Russians were summarily executing villagers or chasing away, shooting at people randomly without really differentiating between suspects and normal people. Even in one case, there were people called in and lined at the gunpoint, and the Russian guy took a Quran and started to preach, told them that the jihadists lied to you, and we are the ones, we Russians and the Malian troops are the ones who are truly legitimate in the eyes of God, and you should obey us now, and because this is what Quran says. So they really don't know much about local culture and how to deal with it. They create much more violence in the consequence of their actions than before.
Yes, I mean, I suppose you could go back in the Polish example to Konrad of Mazovia, who called in the Teutonic Knights, and they came and stayed. I mean, once a government introduces a group of mercenaries, it's very difficult to get them out. They have a life of their own, don't they, with how they operate?
They do, and it's quite clear with Niger. They were called in last month. They arrived with around 100 troops, and they told that they are bringing anti-aircraft missiles. I mean, those anti-aircraft systems are not needed by the Nigerian government in the fight against the jihadis. The jihadis don't have planes, but the Americans, they have their drone base in the country. So this is a message to the US that we can shoot down your drones anytime we want. And this bears another message that we intend to take over the infrastructure of your base in Agadez in northern Niger. So there's much more of supporting geopolitical rivalry on behalf of Russia with those new troops called the African Corps that you had in the times of Wagner and Yevgeny Prigozhin.
So it's a bit more organised in terms of the policy of employing the Africa Corps. What are their strategic aims of? We know that these groups are generally controlled by the Kremlin. What are the strategic aims of Russia in the Sahel, apart from mining the rich resources of the region? Is there any track to this idea of the land corridor across the Sahel and into East Africa?
Well, if you listen to Russian experts, Russian academics, or people from the Russian military, you could build this picture of what the goals are. Some say that this is a plan that is being implemented to create a coherent bloc of countries which are supportive to Russian policies, and that build this nucleus of this broader anti-Western pole in the region. The three countries, three Sahelian states, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, recently withdrew from ECOWAS, from the regional economic bloc, which was seen as pro-Western, and they are building a new alliance called the Alliance of the Sahel States, which has much more clearly pro-Russian or anti-Western view. They will drop the common currency and they will adopt a new one. I would not be surprised if this new one is printed in Russia, as was the case with General Haftar in Libya, who had his own dinars printed in Russia. So there is clearly a geopolitical rivalry behind it. It's a means to achieve some victories against France and against the United States, particularly, but also to create to help building some permanent, stable political bloc that would be able to attract new members, and that would pretty much challenge the Western presence.
From the Western point of view, are there any pro-Western states left, or have all the dominoes fallen?
Oh, there are. There's Mauritania, for example. Recently,
next target.
Recently, Malian and Russian troops crossed the border from Mali to Mauritania and attacked one village and shot some civilians. This was very much very badly. Mauritanians and Mauritanian governments view this as a threat and declared that they will no longer accept any incursions and any illegal crossings of its border. So here in the Sahel, Mauritania is quite firmly on the Western side, or on the side of rationality. It's a country. It's a post-jihadist country. It had a problem with the jihadis 15 years back, but it overcame it, and now it has a different perspective. But also in the region, Ghana, for example, Côte d'Ivoire, those are states where the U.S. troops would relocate probably after leaving Niger, because Chad, which used to be traditionally considered by France as its most important ally, is not reliable anymore. And
Is the private enterprise solution to geopolitics, especially in Africa, is that an answer, do you think? For example, I'm thinking about the Western mercenaries in the Congo, 1960s, very effective, others less so, but executive outcomes, for example, in Western Africa. Is that the way to go, where you can just, okay, let's get a Western Africa Corps and we'll fight it out on the private level?
Well, Wagner Group, or the former Wagner Group, is not the only one in this business. And actually, in many African countries, and in the same African countries that we discuss, you also have PMCs from other countries. In the Central African Republic, the Americans, who were frustrated with Russian influence, the idea they came up with how to counter how to help the government to loosen the Russian grip was to introduce its own PMC. The same is being done in Libya. In Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, you have a plethora of private contractors. Romanian mercenaries, former legionaries are there very active.
Yeah.
And so it's an open competition
market.
and open markets, and this market is thriving.
Yeah. We talk a lot about on the highest level of military, geopolitical, strategic level. What's this life going to be like for someone in the provinces in the Sahel region, in the Sahel countries?
Well, those are...
What are they going to see? Are they going to see any difference at all? Whoever is in power in the capital, for example.
I mean, those are traditionally... There's this rivalry between the centers and the peripheries in all of those countries, in all the poorest countries and in all the most fragile countries. The governments, are pretty much satisfied and happy with securing the capital, and they are externalizing and pushing the insecurity out of the capitals onto the provinces. And the armed forces of those states are usually seen in the provinces as just another threat, just another roaming armed threat, not much difference to rebel groups or to the jihadis. So until the army and the state institutions regain credibility and regain ability to bring justice on local level, there will be no change in perspective. Yes. Because this whole problems are born with a sense of injustice, particularly on local level in the provinces. If the state is not effective on that field, people will look to alternative solutions or to alternative orders, whether jihadis, Russians, or anyone else.
That's all we have time for today. Jędrzej Czerep, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for, so do stay tuned and join us again next time on How We Got Here.